Have you ever had a conversation where the other person suddenly went quiet, and instead of feeling calm, you felt a tiny jolt of panic? Maybe it was during a text exchange when someone stopped replying mid-sentence, or during a face-to-face talk when they hesitated before answering. And instantly your mind filled the silence with stories. They're upset. I said something wrong. Something bad is coming. What's strange is that nothing was actually said, yet the pause felt louder than words. This video is about that moment, about why silence can feel threatening, why your brain rushes to fill it with worst-case interpretations, and how you can turn those uncomfortable pauses into powerful tools for clarity and deeper connection instead of stress triggers. To understand why silence hits so hard, you need to know something surprising. Your brain hates missing information. Evolution trained it to treat ambiguity as danger. If you think about early humans, silence didn't mean everything is fine. Silence in the forest meant a predator might be nearby. Silence in the group meant disapproval or rejection. In our ancient past, silence signaled risk. And your brain still reacts as if you're in the wild, even when you're just waiting for someone to finish a sentence. So when you're in a conversation and a pause appears, your brain doesn't sit calmly in that empty space. It tries to solve it. It generates interpretations, possibilities, predictions. But your mind doesn't say, let's gather more data. Instead, it says, I know exactly what this means, even though you rarely do. The truth is that silence is a blank screen, and your brain is a projector. It throws onto that screen whatever unresolved fears, insecurities, or expectations you carry. Think about how this works in real time. Someone hesitates before responding to your comment. That moment of quiet is neutral. It could mean they're thinking, they're tired, they're distracted, or they didn't quite understand what you meant. But your brain, wired for quick threat detection, jumps in and says, they're judging me. If you're sensitive to rejection, your brain projects rejection. If you fear conflict, your brain projects conflict. If you fear abandonment, your brain fills the silence with abandonment. This is why the exact same pause can feel totally different to different people. What you see in silence is shaped not by the silence itself, but by what lives inside you. Let's go deeper. There are three main ways your brain misinterprets silence. The first is projection. This is when your brain takes your own internal state, anxiety, guilt, insecurity, anger, and attributes it to someone else. If you feel unsteady inside, even a harmless pause can feel like confirmation that something is wrong. The second is mind reading. Your brain automatically tries to infer the other person's intentions without any evidence. It fills the blank space with a full narrative. She paused because she doesn't like my idea, or he didn't reply because he's losing interest. The third is emotional time distortion. Silence expands emotionally. A 2-second pause can feel like 10. A 10-minute delay in texting can feel like an hour. Your brain stretches the pause because it's scanning it for danger. Now, none of this means you're weak or overly dramatic. It means you're human. Silence is one of the least studied yet most powerful emotional triggers in communication. In fact, research in interpersonal psychology shows that people interpret silence through their attachment style. Anxiously attached individuals often read silence as abandonment. Avoidantly attached individuals may use silence as a way to distance or protect themselves. Securely attached individuals tend to interpret silence more neutrally, seeing it simply as space. This explains why the same silent moment can feel peaceful to one person and terrifying to another. But here's where things get interesting. Silence isn't inherently negative. Used consciously, it's one of the most powerful communication tools you have. Silence can be grounding, it can signal thoughtfulness, it can invite openness, it can create emotional depth. The problem is that most of us have never been taught how to sit with silence without letting our fears twist it into something threatening. We treat silence like a void that needs to be filled instead of a space that can reveal truth. So how do you retrain your brain to interpret silence more accurately, and even use it to understand yourself and others more deeply? The first step is awareness. When you feel that inner surge of panic during a pause, notice what interpretation your mind automatically jumps to. Does silence feel like judgment, rejection, disapproval, uncertainty? That initial guess tells you far more about you than about the other person. Once you start noticing your patterns, you begin to see that the majority of your discomfort is happening inside your own mind, not in reality. The second step is to learn to separate the silence from the story. Silence is a fact. They paused. They didn't reply for 20 minutes. There was a gap before they answered. Everything else, they're angry, I messed up, they don't care, is a story your brain created. When you catch yourself fusing the two, pause and ask, what are the facts and what is my interpretation? This one question alone can stop countless unnecessary conflicts. The third step is to give silence meaning only after asking clarifying questions. If someone hesitates before responding, instead of jumping to conclusions, you can say, I noticed you paused. Are you thinking, or did I say something confusing? When texting, instead of assuming the worst, remind yourself, I don't know what's happening on their side unless they tell me. Clarification replaces projection, and clarity feels much safer than assumption. But there's a deeper level to all of this, one that will reshape not just how you navigate silence, but how you understand relationships. Silence often reveals parts of you that words can't. When you're uncomfortable with someone's pause, it exposes your core fear. When someone uses silence with intention, it reveals their level of emotional presence. When a moment of quiet feels peaceful instead of threatening, it shows that your nervous system trusts the interaction. Silence, in its purest form, is an X-ray. It shows what's happening beneath the conversation. And because most people speak without speaking, through micro-expressions, breathing shifts, changes in posture, the space between words often carries more emotional truth than the words themselves. This is why silence feels so powerful. Your brain knows that pauses contain meaning, but it doesn't always know how to decode that meaning accurately. It tries to fill the gap faster than your conscious mind can process. In a way, silence is the purest mirror. It reflects both your internal state and the emotional atmosphere between you and the other person. And learning to read this mirror with clarity instead of fear is one of the most valuable communication skills you can develop. Continues in part 2. But to make silence your ally instead of your trigger, you need one more crucial shift. You must learn to interpret silence not as a statement, but as an environment. Words are snapshots, brief, contained units of meaning. Silence is the landscape in which those snapshots live. It holds mood, context, history, tension, openness, and emotional climate. And when you start seeing silence as an environment rather than a signal of danger, you stop reacting to it and start reading it. Let's explore how to do that. The first practical tool is what I call the neutral pause reframe. This is a simple but powerful exercise. When you notice silence and feel that familiar wave of discomfort, take a mental step back and ask yourself, if I had to assume the most neutral explanation, what would it be? Your brain will resist. It wants to jump to emotional conclusions, but practicing neutrality rewires your interpretive patterns. For example, they didn't answer right away becomes they might be thinking or distracted or unsure how to phrase their response. They paused before responding becomes they're processing, not judging. Neutral explanations loosen the grip of fear and create space for more accurate interpretations. The second tool is the silence scan. This technique helps you distinguish between real relational cues and internal projection. The next time someone goes silent, instead of hyper-focusing on them, shift your attention into your body. Notice your breathing, your shoulders, your jaw. Are you tightening, holding your breath? Is your chest heavy? These sensations are your early warning system, but not about the other person. They reveal your own emotional context. You might find that the silence feels threatening because of what you fear, not because of what is happening. This awareness creates a buffer between the pause and your reaction, and that buffer is where clarity comes from. The third tool is curiosity over certainty. Most misinterpretations of silence come from premature certainty. Your brain thinks, I know exactly what this pause means, when in reality, silence rarely communicates a single, clear message. So instead of assuming, you practice staying with curiosity. Ask yourself, what else could this mean? What might be happening on their side? Do I have enough information to interpret this pause? You'll quickly discover that most of your initial assumptions don't hold up. Curiosity softens your fear response and opens the door to more grounded, compassionate interpretations. The fourth tool is using silence intentionally. This is where silence transforms from something you fear into something you wield. For example, leaving a small pause after someone finishes speaking signals that you're actually absorbing their words instead of rushing to reply. It invites them to continue, to go deeper. Therapists use this technique constantly, and it works because silence communicates attention, not withdrawal. You can also use silence as a reset. When a conversation becomes emotionally charged, a well-timed pause gives both nervous systems a moment to recalibrate. It breaks automatic patterns and allows a more thoughtful response to emerge. These intentional uses of silence teach your brain a crucial lesson. Not all silence is dangerous. Another profound shift happens when you learn to distinguish between two types of silence: external silence and internal silence. External silence is the literal absence of sound or response. Internal silence is the quieting of your own immediate interpretations. You can have external silence while your inner world is screaming with assumptions. And you can cultivate internal silence even when a conversation is emotionally intense. The key is realizing that external silence only becomes painful when your internal silence breaks, when your fears rush into the gap. So part of this work is training yourself to tolerate internal stillness, even if the outer moment feels ambiguous. This skill is transformative. It reduces anxiety, improves communication, and allows you to stay present even when you feel vulnerable. Now let's talk about something subtle but essential. Not all silence is accidental or unconscious. Some silence is communication, and learning to tell the difference is a major part of emotional intelligence. For example, silence can signal respect, as in, "I'm giving you space to finish your thought." It can signal contemplation, as in, "I'm choosing my words carefully." It can signal emotional saturation, as in, "I need a moment to process before I respond." But silence can also signal withdrawal, disengagement, suppressed anger, emotional shutdown, avoidance. When silence is charged, when the atmosphere shifts, when tension rises, when the other person's nonverbal cues tighten, that silence is information. Not a threat necessarily, but a real signal. And you can read this kind of silence far more accurately by observing behavior rather than filling gaps with imagination. A useful question here is the silence accompanied by openness or closure? If the person maintains soft eye contact, relaxed posture, or a thoughtful expression, the silence likely means presence. If the person turns away, crosses their arms, or stiffens, the silence may indicate emotional distance or discomfort. Again, you're not mind reading, you're reading cues. This is the difference between grounded interpretation and anxious projection. Let's go deeper into one more concept: silence as a mirror for unmet needs. When a pause feels disproportionately painful, it often reflects an older story inside you, a childhood pattern, an attachment wound, or a belief about your worth. Maybe silence once meant rejection, or punishment, or unpredictability, or the emotional absence of someone important. When those early experiences go unexamined, your adult brain reacts to silence not as it is, but as it was. This is why the smallest pause can sometimes trigger the biggest emotional response. The work here isn't to judge yourself, but to understand yourself. When silence hurts, ask, "What old story is waking up inside me?" When you can identify the emotional root, the present moment feels far less overwhelming. The final step is integration, learning to let silence be silence, to let it exist without rushing to interpret or solve it, to allow space without letting fear colonize that space. This doesn't mean ignoring your instincts, it means separating instinct from imagination. It means noticing your reactions with kindness, grounding yourself in the present moment, and staying connected instead of retreating into assumptions. Over time, you'll find that silence gains a new texture. It feels less like threat and more like breath, less like emptiness and more like depth. And eventually, silence becomes something you can trust, because you're no longer filling it with your fears. If this video helped you recognize even one moment where silence shaped your emotions without your awareness, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to Mind Unlocked. Here, every episode is designed as a toolkit for better thinking and deeper self-understanding, so you can navigate both words and the spaces between them with more clarity, confidence, and emotional intelligence, and ultimately live a life led not by anxious interpretation, but by your own calm and authentic mind.